Chinese trade negotiators left Washington this afternoon apparently with little more to show for their 48-hour trip halfway around the world than a barrage of tweets from the president. Tariffs will make our country much stronger, not weaker, said one tweet. Another falsely claimed that tariffs are now being paid to the United States by China of 25% on $250 billion worth of goods and products. These massive payments go directly to the Treasury of the U.S. The payments do go to the U.S. Treasury, but they come from U.S. taxpayers, not the Chinese. And U.S. taxpayers could pay even more.
And then if the president goes ahead and does what he says he wants to do for the next step, which is basically put a 25% tariff tax on every other good coming in from China, then that will absolutely go to the pocketbooks of Americans.
An expanded trade war could cost 1 million American jobs by some estimates. It didn't have to be this way, says the former U.S. trade representative who negotiated NAFTA. If the U.S. had joined the Trans-Pacific Partnership, it wouldn't be fighting China on its own right now, and China would have more reason to fall into line with international trade rules.
I think that we could have gotten a better deal with more diplomacy rather than tariffs. Tariffs are really not a tool of trade. They cost us more jobs than they ever create.
And Andrew, Trump is also getting set to bail out U.S. farmers hit by retaliatory tariffs from China. He tweeted today that the U.S. will buy up farm products in larger amounts than China ever did and just give it away to poor countries.
Right, but where does he get the money for that?
Well, from the tariffs, of course, but we know that's not true. American taxpayers will pay to buy product from American farmers and then give it away. It's one reason it's said that no one ever wins a trade war.
Keith Bogue in Washington, thanks so much. Okay, so Canadians may be wondering, are these good times or bad times? I mean, that trade dispute is a ticking time bomb, but Canada's dynamite job numbers suggest the economy is in high gear. Well, Peter Armstrong breaks down that question into 3 easy parts.
It's easy to cheer the job numbers or fear the trade uncertainty, but as ever, it's a bit more complicated than that. By any measure, an economy is rife with contradictions. Today's stunning jump in jobs tells us one story, but persistent, slow growth tells us another. The Canadian economy will grow this year at a mere 1.2%.
The reality is probably somewhere between the dark picture painted by the lack of economic growth we saw in the fourth and likely first quarter, and these very buoyant hiring numbers that seem out of line with the lack of any production to show for all those jobs.
The new U.S. tariffs are sweeping and broad, hitting more than $200 billion worth of imports. The Chinese response, so far at least, has been far more targeted. China slapped tariffs on U.S. soybeans. A map of soybean production is like a heat map of Trump support in the last election. Any significant increase in the tariff war is sure to slow global consumption. The fallout would hit everyone, everywhere. Meanwhile, Canada remains decidedly stuck between the two superpowers. From canola shipments to Canadians detained in China, this country has a growing list of concerns. And according to at least one report, Canadian officials in China can't even get their calls returned.
Canada could certainly keep pressing China to try to get talks going on some of the frictions we have, but clearly a resolution between China and the U.S. would cool the overall temperature between North America and China and help us out.
So, contradictions abound. It's hard to fault Canadian consumers who feel stuck in someone else's fight, worried, even on a day with such positive economic news, about how bad things may still get. Peter Armstrong, CBC News, Toronto.